everyone. Hey, Gonzalo.
Hey, Gaston, how's it going?
Doing great, doing great. This is going to be fun. I welcome everybody. Tell us, as Pam mentioned in the chat, where you're coming from, where you're connecting from. Good morning, good afternoon, good night for everyone that joined us today. This is going to be a whole series learn together around the new SQL databases in Microsoft Fabric. We are going to be covering today with Gonzalo about integrations, about notebooks, about the reports, and how you connect all the dots together with the new databases workload out of Microsoft Fabric. So, welcome everyone. My name is Gaston Cruz. I'm Senior Director for Slalom Consulting Firm here. I'm also MVP in Data Platform World. Love community, love engagements, love user groups, meetups, and so on, as well. Gonzalo. So, Gonzalo, chime in and introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So here, Gonzalo Vicio from Buenos Aires, Argentina, now working as a data and AI lead for Exxon Consulting. I would say that I love Microsoft. I love communities, user group, the same as Gaston, and I am very happy to be here. Thank you to Matri, Javi, who also wants to participate today, but he couldn't. And yeah, I'm here, very happy to be here with one of the best MVPs in the world, Gaston. And so let's have fun.
Yep, sounds great, Gonzalo, and it's a pleasure to have this kind of backup from Javier. We met before with Gonzalo. We're gonna run a lot of community engagement, so let's pick up from here. So, couple of things that I would love to recall. First of all, say hi, ask questions in the chat. We have a really amazing moderators that can support us today, and we are going to be trying to leave some Q&A at the end of this session for answer some of the questions from this community. So that being said, there's a lot of series and a lot of great sessions around this series on Microsoft Fabric and the new SQL databases. So stay tuned for all these sessions. We had yesterday the first one, getting to know SQL databases in Fabric. Today, as I mentioned, we are going to be covering more the integrations, the options in terms of pipelines, data flows, notebooks, as well reports, and how Power BI integrate with all these things that we are going to be covering today. Tomorrow we have a sessions around using AI and SQL's vector functionality with SQL database in Fabric. Then next week we have 3 sessions. One is around GraphQL and application development from a SQL database standpoint. Then we have another one for application lifecycle management with SQL database in Fabric. And the last one is going to be developer-centric query and performance monitoring. We have 2 sessions from different time zones, so stay tuned for that. And as well, of course, these sessions are going to be available offline to check on them and after this call. So, of course, remember, this is big, this is coming, this is community engagements, this is happening in Vegas, end of March 31st, April 2nd, 2025. You have early bird discounts, so go ahead and use that code to save $150 in your passes. You have the link to register now to the Fabric conference happening in Vegas, as I mentioned before. A lot of community engagements, a lot of announcements coming to the conference, a lot of interaction with product team members, as well with user groups leaders are going to be there. A lot of community out of the conference, so stay tuned. If you have the option to be there, this is huge. This is going to be really fun, and this is going to be a really great conference to be in. So stay tuned for that. So, topic for today. I don't know if everybody know, but a couple of weeks back we had Microsoft Ignite, one of the biggest announcements out of Microsoft Ignite in Chicago. Actually, we spent some time together with Gonzalo and Mariano and other MVPs back there. That was really fun. That was big, and one of the biggest announcements out of that from Microsoft Fabric was a whole new workload that is the SQL databases integrations in Microsoft Fabric. How that is going to be changing a little bit the game, and this is kind of what I feel that is a game changer for all of us. The the way you're gonna be integrate more and more with your applications, the way you're gonna be interacting and ingest data is gonna be changing. The way you are gonna be developing new apps is gonna be changing as well. The integration with data flows, with notebooks, and as well with Power BI. So let's dig in a little bit on that framework. Let's start with the process of, in all the workflows out of Microsoft Fabric, you have as one of the biggest topic is data factory. And within data factory, you mean how I can start ingesting data into Microsoft Fabric. And there's multiple options. And what I see of data pipelines is kind of a main orchestrator around how to ingest data out of Microsoft Fabric. So doesn't matter if you've been in the Power BI world or you're coming from a data engineer's perspective. What you can do is get in all together via data pipelines, because in data pipelines you have a powerful workflow to cloud scale the integration between different systems and different data sources. That means that you can integrate from on-premises, you can integrate cloud, you can integrate sources from Microsoft, sources from out of Microsoft or third-party vendors. So doesn't matter if you have multiple sources, you can start engaging and creating a data pipeline to ingest data in Microsoft Fabric. That means that doesn't matter if your architecture design is going to land data in a custom databases, or you are going to be landing data in a lakehouse, or you're landing data in a data warehouse, or in this case, if you want to use the new SQL databases and you want to land data in a SQL databases. The other topic that we will have to share around this is when you build the workflow out of the pipelines, you can start calling all these methods to ingest and transform data. That means that you can start with data pipeline. You can start, with a fast copy or data copy activity, but then you can start calling notebooks to transform the data or to shape the data, to clean the data. As well, you can call a data flow if you are familiar with Power Query, and create all the workflow in data pipeline calling all these methods. Of course, you can include loops, you can include conditionals, you can include the mapping of the data. You can include multiple services all together and multiple artifacts all together within the data pipeline itself. So, and that means that you are going to be able to connect and define and import or leverage different connectors that are natively to this process, meaning that you have more than 100 connectors, and I'm going to check that in the next slide, that all the connectors are available for you. So if you want to connect with an Azure Data Lake, or you want to connect to local platform, meaning Dataverse for Power Platform on business application, or you want to connect to your Dynamics or Postgre is SQL, or you want to connect directly with Snowflake because Snowflake is your enterprise data warehouse. So everything is natively available for you. That means that you can get the data directly from all these multiple sources, land the data, and then when you pick where to land the data, you can access all the artifacts directly from Microsoft Fabric. And that means that in Microsoft Fabric, remember that the backend is one lake, so you are going to be able to land everything in one Delta Parquet format and then picking up from there. And even if you need to read that data from all the other system like Databricks or Snowflake, that is available for you. So you are not locking down only in that framework. So that means that you can start picking up, the pieces that you need for your architecture design based on your use case. Going to what is look like to create a data pipeline. This is kind of a common process where you are picking up different artifacts. Remember that this is really similar in terms of, the UI UX of this screen that is familiar for Azure Data Factory users. So that is kind of pretty much a parity between both frameworks. And when you create with the data factory workload out of Microsoft Fabric, you're going to be able to set up all these kind of activities. You're going to be allowing to monitoring all that happens in your workflow within the pipeline itself. That means that you can copy data, you can call notebooks, you can monitoring what is going on in every single implementation or leveraging and running the pipeline itself, and you can see all the activities that happens, when are starting, what is the duration of all the activities, and what is the output out of that. And you can connect all of this. Remember that CI/CD is one of the mindset that you have across all the artifacts within Microsoft Fabric. That means that you can connect your pipeline process with GitHub. You can connect this to monitoring all that happened, to have one single repo, to have version control, and so on. So this is really meaningful in terms of how we operate across different artifacts within Microsoft Fabric. So the data factory process is the way you are going to orchestrate your ingestion framework within Microsoft Fabric. This is one of the options that you have for transformation or shaping the data within Microsoft Fabric, and this is Dataflow Gen2. For those that are coming from different worlds, different scenarios, like me, I'm coming more from a Power BI background because I love Power BI for a long time. I did Power BI for a long time. And I love Power Query. So one of the things that you can do here is you can start the process, as I mentioned before, you can start the process leveraging data pipelines. And data pipelines allow you to start orchestrate all your ingestion framework. After you start working with your ingestion framework, it's up to you, and it's up to your team, and it's up to your use case, your scenario, but also within your skill sets. Because if you're coming from a data engineer world, perhaps when Gonzalo chime in and say, hey, let's go to notebooks, maybe Gonzalo is looking at, hey, my team is more kind of aware of Python scripting, or now that you have SQL as part of one of the programming language back there in notebooks, you can integrate the SQL directly in your notebook experience. If you're coming to Gaston saying, hey, Gaston, I am not so familiar with Python. I don't want to deal with that. I've been doing Power BI for a long time, so I am kind of pretty much in a comfort zone with Dataflows Gen2 because I know that I can run Power Query. I know the programming language. I love the UX UI design of Dataflows Gen2. I am familiar with that. So you can go and implement all your transformation and cleansing of the data directly with Dataflows Gen2, and you're going to be having exactly all the same interaction with the data that you have in Power BI or behind the scenes of Power BI, meaning that you're going to be quickly and easily connect to all the data sources, on-premises, cloud, Microsoft, non-Microsoft. You're going to be getting all the UX, UI design in terms of tool sets to transform your data via Dataflows Gen2. As well, you're going to be accelerate all the data transformation almost code-free. Why I mention almost code-free? Because, when you start with any programming language, you do just kind of baby steps on that one. You start the process of, hey, I want to, remove this column. I want to change this data type. And you can do everything from the UX, UI design just with a few clicks in Dataflows Gen2. But if you want to go to the next layer, you can go to the advanced editor in Power Query, and you can be really deep on the programming language, meaning that you can create your own functions, you can leverage those functions, you can leverage parameters, you can start establishing more powerful or robust architectural design within your data flows. You can implement incremental refresh as well, and that is kind of available from a UX standpoint, but you also can leverage the programming language of Power Query to make that happen. Regarding this one and how SQL databases are part of the overall framework. What I would love to share here is once you end up the process of doing the transformations with data flows, let's say that I'm extracting data from a CSV file, I'm extracting data from an Excel or a SQL or SharePoint list or Dataverse. I get the data from multiple sources with Dataflows Gen2. I transform and shape the data, changing data types, remove columns, and doing some additional transformation there. And then one of the biggest, things around Dataflows Gen2 that I can output or land the final information out of the data flow session 2. And before the announcement, I can land data to a lakehouse, to a warehouse, to a custom databases, to a data warehouse of Microsoft Fabric. But now you are going to be able also to land the data in your own SQL database within Fabric. And you're going to be able to have a SQL endpoint and define I want to land data right away from my data flow into my SQL database. And you can create a new table if you want directly in that SQL databases, and you can access that SQL endpoint right away from the Dataflows Gen2. Of course, Copilot is everywhere. Copilot is one of the biggest artifacts that you can leverage so far for all the different workloads out of Microsoft Fabric. So you can check that. You have the additional component of Gen AI within Data Factory itself. So you can leverage Copilot within data flows. You can go and ask Copilot, hey, I want to remove this column. I want to change this data type. I want to leverage the first row as headers. As well, Gonzalo can go and chime in and say, hey, I want in this notebook to leverage this transformation. How I can do that with Python or SQL? I can from Data Factory say, hey, in my workflow of a new data pipeline, I need to do this transformation, or I need to check every single row of this table and land every single row into my lakehouse. And you can ask Copilot how to make that happen. So Copilot is not just one single Copilot. There's multiple Copilots across all the workloads in Microsoft Fabric. That depends on what is your scenario and what you're going to be doing with your data pipelines or process itself. So you can leverage multiple Copilots within all the different Microsoft Fabric workloads. Let's see a little bit on this one, how you can load data within Dataflows Gen2 and stop Gaston's talking, and let's see a little bit on what's going on when you want to land data. In this video, you're going to see, first of all, that we already have a new databases. This is a new artifact and a new database coming into Microsoft Fabric. And we are going to be starting the point of, hey, I already have my SQL database within Microsoft Fabric. How I can leverage a new Dataflow Gen2 to do transformations and land data into that SQL database. So as you can see here, we can create a new item. As well, of course, we can search for the new item. The Dataflow Gen2 is one of the options. But of course, you can click on the SQL databases that we already have. And from the SQL databases, you can start integrating with a new Dataflows Gen2. So in this case, we are clicking in the get data from the SQL database zone. And as soon as we click on the SQL databases and get data leveraging Dataflow Gen2, we can start the process of leveraging a new Dataflow Gen2. In this case, we are naming that we are importing SQL profiles from this data flow, and then we are getting data, and this get data is getting the data directly from a CSV file. In this case, it's just easy as just uploading a new file. That file could be in a SharePoint folder, could be in a OneDrive, and you can leverage this CSV file. In this case, I am just moving the file of speaker profile CSV file to this UI design. And as you can see, I'm leveraging a connection credential with using my organizational account, and that is authentication method in this case. So we are copying moving the data from CSV file. As you can see, there's a preview option of what's going on with that CSV file. So we can create the import from the CSV file. This is the speaker profiles. You can check in the first line that the first line seems that there are titles over there. So one of the transformation that you can do is click in the transform layer, use first row as headers, and you can click in that option and you're doing the first transformation, is making that line as the first row and defining the headers for each of those. You can check all the transformation that you can do. You can remove columns, you can duplicate columns, you can split columns, you can replace values, you can group by or unpivot columns or unpivot the other columns. You can have a lot of different transformation right away at your fingertips. You can just click on UX UI design here and doing all these transformations together. As you can check on this one, you can also define the destination. So we are clicking on the destination and we are having the option to connect right away to our SQL database. And in this case, we are landing the data in our SQL database, but also we are searching for the right SQL database and we are defining the table name that we want to create out of this data flow. So the data flows is picking the data from CSV file, doing transformation, and right away from here you can define the destination of that Dataflow Gen2. In this case, the destination is our sessions database, our SQL sessions database. We are creating a new speaker profile, and you can define the automatic settings or doing the column mapping between the tables and the destination. So this is what we are doing right now with Dataflow Gen2 and the options to land the data right point database. After you finish with this, use the data flows, you publish the data flows, it's gonna hit the first refresh. So be patient around that because sometimes it's taking time to do the refresh. Of course, after all of this, you can do an incremental refresh or setting up an incremental refresh if you're the desire to do that. But of course, this overall the process to get data with Dataflows Gen2 and how to land the data into your SQL database within Microsoft Fabric. Let's switch to my friend Gonzalo. So going to look like to do transformation with notebooks and what is available notebooks within Microsoft Fabric.
All right, thank you, Gaston. Do you hear me? Yes, right?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, yes, as Gaston mentioned before, we have different options. Well, basically, Fabric is something that will help you to have everything together in a single place. You have different roles, you have different persona experiences that you can do within Fabric. On this case, we have the Pro Code option. On this case, basically, we're going to code everything. We have some options that I will talk soon also in order to transform data using a GUI. But in this case, we have the options to use notebooks. Basically, you will see here that, for example, you can connect to different sources within Fabric. We are talking about lakehouses, warehouses, but also now Fabric databases with the SQL endpoint. Basically, if you were able yesterday to see the amazing episode 1, in where our colleagues discuss about the architecture and where you can have SQL databases and then using mirroring, the data is automatically replicated from Azure SQL to directly to Fabric. But also now you can use notebooks in order to connect, in order to transform, in order to ingest data directly from SQL databases into the notebooks. What can we do then? What are the languages that we can use? For example, we can use, as Gaston mentioned, Python. We can use Scala. We can use R. We can use PySpark in order to execute multiple threads or running in parallel the same notebook. But also we can use some other options. For example, depending on the capacity that you are using for your Fabric, you can use more or you can use less number of nodes in order to run this in parallel. You can, for example, use different libraries, as you can see on the slide, that you can use the pipe installs in order to use different libraries. Besides, obviously, as Gaston mentioned before, you can use Copilot here. If you're using F64 or higher capacity, you can automatically use Copilot in case that you need some help with developing your code. You can use, for example, different cells in order to connect to each of the sources, in order to transform, in order to do different stuff. If you're talking, for example, about a medallion architecture, you can use, for example, notebooks to transform your data. You can use pipeline to extract and load data into your bronze layer. And then you can use notebooks in order to transform the data and move the data to different layers. You have something called Data Wrangler. That is something that you can use in order to transform your data using a very beautiful GUI. You have different options, for example, to eliminate duplicates, among other things. And you will see also the code below in order to copy and paste directly this code from the Data Wrangler directly to the notebook. But honestly, you have a lot of options here as long as you are a pro code person and you want to develop everything. Or for example, you are using data science VMs in Azure and you want to migrate that code directly into Fabric because you have your lakehouse, your data warehouse, your database here, and you don't want to configure, anything extra, and you don't want to maintain VMs, and you want to code everything inside Fabric. You can do that. In fact, there are some other libraries that will help you to see, as you can see on the image, if you want to see some dashboards, or you can use directly Power BI in order to show the information. Let me move one here. Soon you will see one of the options, as Gaston mentioned before, that you can also have, or you can execute this SQL code directly into the notebooks in order to get the information. But also, as I mentioned before, you have different cells, as you can see here. You can see the intermediate results. Let's say that you are transforming or we are running a full pipeline between codes and you want to see the different results because you want to see how the data is. Or for example, you are doing some cleansing on your data, you are removing some duplicates, you are removing, based on your business needs, you are removing some information and you want to see how it's behaving. Obviously, as Gaston mentioned before, everything is on top of one lake, everything is saved there. But in case that you want to see, the different steps of each transformation, you will be able to see directly on the notebooks. And honestly, you have a lot of options. In case that you want to develop everything, in case that you want to control what is going on each of the cells. As I mentioned, you can combine different sources within Fabric if you have different lakehouses, because you have one lakehouse per, let's say, medallion layer. And you want to connect all of them, you can do that. The same for warehouse, the same for Fabric databases. Honestly, it's amazing. It will give you flexibility on how to develop, on how to connect, on how to see the data, on what you are doing. You can configure, as I mentioned before, the number of nodes, the type of nodes, because depending on your workload, you can use in-memory Spark nodes, among others. But honestly, it's very flexible. But now let's see at least some demos. Let me just move, very quick. So at least we can see this in action. In this case, we are going to create a new item, of course. You can just search for the notebooks there. You will be able to develop one node within your workspace because, as you know, within your workspace, you save everything. Then on the left side, you will see the different resources. In this case, we are going to use warehouse in this case, the SQL endpoint. This is obviously, all the things in where we can connect from the notebook itself. Click confirm, and automatically you will be connected to your warehouse. You have the different, obviously, objects. You have the tables, you have the views, functions, stored procedures, the ones that exist within warehouse. And then you can choose the language. The one that I was mentioned before, you have PySpark, Spark, Python, and in this case, we are going to execute T-SQL. Basically, we are selecting some columns from the speaker profile column table, sorry, and then we are grouping by location. As you can see above, we already choose the T-SQL language, and next to that button, we have the run all in case that we want to, let's say that we have more than one cell and we want to run together, or we can just execute that cell. And you will see very soon the information that we are using notebooks with T-SQL native language connected to the warehouse and executed the query. Then you can see the charts, at least if you want to see the information within a chart, because in this scenario, we have different speakers from all over the world. And then we can save this as view, because let's say that we have a repetitive report, multiple reports pointing to these objects, and we want to have the same thing. That is why we can create a view in order to save the code and say, okay, hey, I want to reuse this code for other matters. And I don't want to create all the time the same query. Then we create the view, and we will be able to see it on the views folder. And then, well, as I mentioned, well, you have above Copilot, for example, in case that you're using the F64 capacity, in case that, for example, you need some help or you want to speed up. Besides, you can add some titles there. If you want to separate, let's say, the cells between them, and you want to add some markdowns there, and then you can create another queries. In this case, we're using subqueries in order to get the information. We are choosing the T-SQL language in order to get the results, and then we will run the cell. And it's very simple. As you can see, if you want to use T-SQL directly within notebooks, you can do that. You can do the same for the Spark, for the Python, all that stuff, including the libraries. Or then, for example, if you create different data frames and you want to use the data wrangler, you can search for the data frame directly, and a new GUI will appear there. And again, we are saving this as view. Very simple in case that you want to reuse again this code. Then we will click OK, and automatically it will be saved. Again, we are combining, as of now, warehouse, but we can do the same thing with SQL databases within Fabric. Let's say that you have multiple tables there and you don't want to move everything. You want to run some queries directly within the database. You can do the same. And then you can save the notebook in case that someone wants to reuse it or want to modify it. As you can see above, that is the name of the notebook itself. And that's it. Let's go to the other one. And I think that I am, yeah. And let's go to the one and only Gaston to talk about Power BI.
Sounds great, Gonzalo. Let's switch back to my screen then, and we are going to be picking up on one of my favorite workflows. That is, hey, how Power BI is going to be mixing with all of this. So, first of all, I was kind of checking on the chat, a lot of great engagements, a lot of great questions from our community back here. You know, that couple of things that I would like to recall. First of all, is not one versus the other. It's not like, hey, Gonzalo is pitching notebooks and Gaston was pitching data flows and before data pipelines. And I need to choose if I'm going to be using data pipelines or notebooks or data flows. You are going to be the main orchestrator. So you're going to be defining which is the right tool for use case for this scenario and for that piece of the workflow, because sometimes what is going to happen to all of you is maybe I am going to be using data pipeline for the first ingestion of the data from the source. Then maybe I'm going to be leveraging notebooks for the whole transformation layer and shaping the data. And maybe then after all of that, if I need to reshape a little bit some tricks on the data, maybe then I am going to call a data flows from there. So my data pipeline is going to be one piece of a copy activity, then another piece calling a notebook, and then another piece calling a data flow, and all together in the same workflow. So remember that you have all these artifacts and all these options, but it's up to you to define when you're going to be leveraging one of them on all of them or some of them for each piece of your workflow. Then after all of this, what is going to be the end user insights on the scenario to check, hey, what is going on with my SQL database? And as Gonzalo was mentioning the last piece of creating the notebooks, and he was creating some views, and he was creating and shaping the data, everything is going to be available for the end user out of Power BI. So everything is available from the semantic model out of Power BI. Actually, if you want to leverage the default semantic model, you can sync up with everything that's happening in your SQL database. So after all of this, you're going to be fully integrated with all the Power BI semantic layer. You're going to be getting the semantic model where you're going to be getting data from all the tables on your SQL database. Remember that the SQL database is opening the SQL endpoint, and that's how we are connecting. That's how Gonzalo was connecting the notebooks via the SQL endpoint, and how he was leveraging a new view or leveraging a new table or shaping the data out of that. He was just connecting to the SQL endpoint as you are doing right now that with Data Warehouse. It's kind of the same. You're going to be opening that SQL endpoint from your SQL databases out of Microsoft Fabric. So for the Power BI perspective, what's going on here? I have my semantic model up and running, connecting to all my tables, all the views that we had in my SQL databases. Everything is going to be stay in sync. The default data set or semantic model is in direct lake mode. That is really important because there's no need to refresh the data. Every single row that's happening in the SQL database is going to be automatically refreshed to your semantic model. If there's any need to switch to data query or import mode, that is available as well. You have the flexibility to change and shape your semantic model if you need to change relationships between two tables. If you need to remove one of the tables from your semantic model, you can do that. The web authoring is all up and running in terms of if you need to add more business logic or measures to your semantic model, that is totally available right away from your web experience. So no need to download, in this case, Power BI Desktop to make that happen. Everything is available in the web, so you need just a web browser, and that's all. And then you can, of course, create your reports from scratch, connecting your semantic model, getting the direct lake connection up and running. Of course, you can leverage Copilot, and this is another Copilot, because you can ask Copilot and say, hey, I would love to create insights or suggest me contents for this report based on the semantic model. Of course, remember, if you are not working with your semantic model, garbage in, garbage out. That means that you're not going to be creating a fantastic Power BI report. Leave some time to work on that. Leave some time to work on the relationships in your data model. Remember that is the most important, and I always get the analogy of the iceberg. Spend some time in the bottom of the iceberg instead of only the top of the iceberg. Remember that it's really important to spend some time to kind of get the right connections, get the right relationships, check on the performance of your data model, check on UA the design or UAT process out of your business logic, out of DAX. Try to follow best practice in terms of understanding your business logic and implement the DAX measures. You have all available in terms of, checking on phones or tablets, may understand your audience in terms of how they are going to be interacting with your Power BI report, how they're going to be exploring data, how they're going to be getting quick insights out of the data. And of course, Power BI is well integrated with other tools and other frameworks, meaning that you can push your Power BI report right away to Microsoft Teams. You can integrate directly in Microsoft Teams. You can start sharing that with your channels and start getting feedback from your end users interacting directly from Microsoft Teams. They don't know, maybe they don't know what is Power BI. Maybe they don't know how to access the Power BI report. You can just embed that in Microsoft Teams. Same happens if you have an executive deck that you want to share with your C-level of your company or your leadership. You can embed directly Power BI report within PowerPoint, and that's gonna be fully integrated. That means that you don't need to integrate just an image. You can integrate the Power BI as it is, and the end user can slice the data from Power BI directly in PowerPoint because they have all the interactions within Power BI. Let's check on this video to see what is available for a Power BI user itself within this framework. So in this video, we're going to be checking a little bit of the interaction from a Power BI perspective. And again, we are in the same workspace. Gaston was working on Dataflows. Gonzalo was working in a notebook. We already have our database out of SQL. We are opening that SQL database right away here. And if you check, we have all the tables up and running in this screen. We have all the views that Gonzalo created before for us. And as well, in the top of my screen, you have the option to create a new report, a new semantic model. You have the options to automatically refresh the semantic model. You have the reporting layer. You have the option to go to your model and open the semantic model right away from this screen. You have all the tables up and running. You have all the relationships between tables. That's going to be one-on-one or one-on-many or many-to-many. You will love to avoid many-to-many all the time, or bidirectional relationships. Be careful about that. Check that you have all the interaction between tables right away. You don't need any other tool. You can just have this experience right away from your browser experience. You have all the options to change all the tables, all the links, or the blue lines that you see in top of the tables. That means that you have a direct link connection to your SQL database. So everything that happens in your SQL database is going to be automatically refreshed here. You can have the option to hide or unhide any table that you don't want to share with your end users. So this is the way you can interact with your semantic model. You can refresh your semantic model right away with the top of the screen, and you can create a new report in Power BI in top of this semantic model. When you hit that option of new report, you can, in this case, check on visualizations, check on filters. You have all the data available. As you can see, I don't need to get the data from any source. It's already connected to my SQL database, and it's showing me all the tables, as well the views that Gonzalo created for us before. So I am picking one of the views that Gonzalo created, and I am bringing the location from the speakers location table. I am bringing the count, and I can see all the sessions for the speakers by location. So you have available everything without getting data from Power BI is already connected to your semantic model, and that semantic model is already created to the SQL databases. In this case, I'm creating another chart, and from that chart, I am bringing data from another of the views. In this case, I'm connecting to the tables right away. I'm bringing the location from the speaker profiles, and I can see all the data coming, saying, in this case, the number of sessions by location, and I can split and just filter the data. In this case, I'm clicking in South America, and I'm checking, hey, how many sessions we have in South America. I can see that Gonzalo is happy about that. So creating another table. I can create another table. In this case, I'm going to create another table with the details of the speakers. So in this case, I'm going to be bringing the name of speakers. In this case, remember that we filter already by South America. So there's two speakers from South America, Carlos and Maria. In this case, I can check all the details of their profiles from the speaker profile, and I can see all the speakers here. I remove the filter and I now can see all the details for all the speakers from my speaker profiles table that we created before. So everything is interactive. Remember, everything is connecting to the semantic model. The semantic model is automatically refreshed by the SQL database, and we remove the barrier of connecting to the data because we already start the process connecting to the SQL database that we have in Microsoft Fabric. That means that everything is well connected to that one, and we are picking up all the information from the speaker profile. So anytime someone is landing more data into that speaker profile table, it's going to be automatically refresh the table. That's going to refresh the semantic model, and right away the semantic model is going to be refreshing this Power BI report. So as you can see, everything is well connected across all the Microsoft Fabric different workloads.
Yeah, and the thing is that you didn't configure everything. You didn't have to add any IPs within the firewall. You didn't have, to do all of the configurations in order to make sure that you see the data. Everything was there. Everything was simple. With a couple of clicks, you were able to get the information, modify the semantic model. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is kind of a perfect thoughts there, Gonzalo. And what I see also is kind of you're bringing all together different roles and personas. If you have a data engineer working on data pipelines before, and then you have another team more aware of the transformations of the data, maybe they're working on notebooks, and then maybe you have a kind of what I call Power BI champions working on data flows and shaping all the design around the data flows. You can have all together, and remember that everything is CI/CD, meaning that you can connect everything with GitHub and with Azure DevOps. That means that you can have a single repo structure with all the version control all together, and that means that you have version control and repo structure for your data pipelines, for your notebooks, for your semantic models, and for your Power BI reports. So you can have everything up and running and hold the integration that happens in the CI/CD framework across all the Microsoft Fabric workloads. As kind of a review of what we saw so far today in our session, we start the process of, hey, how we can get the data up and running from different sources. And again, multiple options. You can get the data with a data pipeline as a main orchestrator. You can get the data with Dataflows Gen2 and shape the data and transform the data right away there. As well, you can land the data with Dataflows Gen2. You can also get the connection with notebooks and shape and transform and create views leveraging Python or leveraging SQL right away in your notebooks and experience that and land the data from there into your SQL endpoint and in your SQL database. You can connect to the analytics endpoint and you can automatically mirror all the data from there, and you can save all the views from there. And last but not least, we finally create our semantic models in Power BI. We get all the views, and this is really important, that you have access to the views that Gonzalo created before in the notebook. So from the Power BI perspective, you also have access right away to the tables in your SQL database, but you also have access to the views that we created via the notebooks, and you can automatically make them visible or and hide that one, and you can use that to leverage and create new Power BI reports. And of course, if you have access to Copilot, you can leverage Copilot to create your design and your Power BI reports as well. I saw a lot of questions coming from our audience today in the Q&A. I am really appreciate all the interactions with all the moderators that they are trying still to answer some of those questions. Of course, we leave some time to additional questions. So if you have any additional questions, it's going to be great to kind of get that. And if we cannot answer that right away today, there's a lot of options to answer your question. Remember to sign up to the Fabric community. There's a lot of interactions in all the forums in our Fabric community. So leave your questions below, and we are going to be trying to answer your questions right away.
All right, so let's start with the first one. If I connect to Fabric SQL from Power BI, is this a direct query connection mode or direct lake connection mode?
That's a Power BI question. Do you want me to chime in,
Yeah,
Gonzalo?
please. You're the
Yeah.
expert. Come on.
So let's go ahead. The default for SQL databases out of Microsoft Fabric and the interaction with Power BI is going to be direct lake. Direct lake connection is the best performance in place across Microsoft Fabric. That doesn't mean that you always are going to leverage direct lake connection. And the next question is why, Gaston? Why this is going to be changing from direct lake to import or direct query? There's a process in the backend that depends on how much data you're leveraging, and the structure of the data could be by default going to direct query, or by default going to import mode. So that depends on how much data you are trying to cache, and that's there's a whole article, and we can push that in the comments of this video to understand why Fabric in the backend sometimes is changing from direct lake to direct query automatically, and understand what's going on with that process and how I can avoid that process.
Nice. Well, let's go to the next one. What might be one of the use case to write to Fabric SQL?
That's a good one. One of the use case could be, let's say that you are developing an application, and you are developing kind of let's say a C# code, or any other application that you're leveraging, and you in the back end of that application, one of the layers is to land the data from your application. One of the great options could be to land the data from your application into the Fabric SQL database, because what you are thinking is to leverage insights out of your application. You want to see how many users they are getting access, how many products, how many articles, how many operations you have. See this as an OLTP transaction model, where you don't need to have that layer of, hey, I have my SQL here, I have my application here, and then right there I have the people that are working on reports for me. Instead of that, you have all integrated in one single framework. So you can develop your application and then land data right away to Fabric SQL. So you have that data up and running to continue your cycle and get insights out of your application from there right away.
Yeah, it's translytical now. If you have, or if you want to have everything together, you can leverage SQL databases inside Fabric. So let's go to the other one. Does the direct lake connection mode have a significant cost impact versus another connection mode?
Good call. The direct lake connection is by default, so you are not moving or copying your data out of your SQL database, and that is one of the benefits that I see in all of this. You're not It's not more kind of cost management, it's more performance kind of a thing, that you are not trying to cache in memory, or that is import, that where you see that, if you're old school like me in Power BI, you're not trying to cache everything in your memory and trying to load everything in your memory right away. As well, if we remember back in the days, if you're dealing with big data and you cannot be doing import because you cannot cache in memory 1 petabytes of data. remember that old school was, hey, let's switch to direct query. So if you are doing direct query, you are going to be sending back and forth the query to your data source. And that, from a performance perspective, is kind of an issue, because every time, let's say, a user, Gonzalo, is trying to slice data between locations by sessions, and just for slice data, he's sending back and forth the query to the data source. So that is going to be hit performance for all of us. So what I see in Direct Lake is a really great benefit that is not getting the data cache in memory. You don't need that. And you don't need to send back and forth queries against your data source all the time.
Nice, great question. So let's go with the last one. What's the difference between Dataflow Gen 1 and Gen 2?
There's a multiple difference. One that I would love to spotlight is destination. You can define a destination in Dataflow Gen2, meaning that you're getting the data from multiple sources, let's say a SharePoint list, a CSV file, a SQL Server on premises, an Oracle database. You're getting all together, you transform and mash up the data in Dataflow Gen2. That data flow lives in the Power BI side of things. In this case, you can define where is your output, and I can say, hey, the output for this data flow is going to be landing the data in my lakehouse, or in my new SQL database, or in my data warehouse, or my Custo database. And how I can define that's based on the use case and scenario that you have, but the destination and the output of the Dataflow Gen2, that is the one that I would love to spotlight between Gen 1 and Gen 2 of Dataflows.
Nice.
Okay, we are going to pick it up. No more questions for today, but you can leave that in the comment. We are going to try to get our moderators or product team members to answer any pending questions from today. Remember that this is a whole series. This is continued tomorrow. You have 2 different time zones, so the session is going to be Pacific time and the other time zone. So stay tuned for all the sessions coming. You have 1 more session tomorrow and 3 more sessions next week. This is a whole learning series about SQL database. So stay tuned and try to make it happen, and or you can get this on demand after that one. Again, remember, Vegas is coming. Fabric conference is coming March 31st. Register now. You have the QR code back there. You have a code to have early bird discount for this series, and stay tuned and hope to see everyone from the community back in Vegas.
Absolutely.
Appreciate and thank you, all of you. It's been a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to share this session with my friend Gonzalo. Stay tuned for more around this. It was really fun. Great engagement from the community. Stay tuned. Remember to sign up if you don't have a user in your Fabric community. Go there, because there's a lot of interactions with the Fabric community, a lot of options to do Q&A and to get interaction directly with the product team back there. So thank you very much. Stay tuned and see you soon.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.